Imagine the following scene. Your 5-year-old son looks in his eyes with an unusual seriousness to age and says, without blinking, that he has lived before as a woman who died in a fire. And if, besides, he could take you to the Guadalajara hills, where the scent of the rosewater mixes with the smoke smell of the El Pastor, to prove each word? This is exactly what happened to a common Mexican middle-class family, whose quiet days became the case of the country's highest documented reincarnation, challenging everything they believed about life, death, and what exists beyond them. Roberto, an engineer in a local factory, and Carmen, an elementary school teacher, had built a simple but meaningful life in a 2-story house in the American colony neighborhood. His only son, Diego, was born on a cold morning of February 2015. From the first moment, Carmen noticed something different in that baby. It was not just the brilliance of maternal pride that all mothers see their children, but a depth in the brown eyes of the boy who made her intrigued, as if those eyes had already witnessed things that no newborn should know. In the first 4 years, Diego looked like a child like any other. He ran after the Poncho dog, a chihuahua full of energy, loved superheroes, and played with strollers in the backyard. But small details began to draw Carmen's attention, which recorded them secret in a diary stored under key. The most disturbing was the boy's absolute refusal to wear pants. Since learning to speak, he insisted on wearing only skirts or dresses, and when Carmen tried to put him on men's clothes, he threw himself on the floor, as if he was feeling a physical pain. "No, Mom, this is not my clothes," he shouted with an anguish that broke the heart. There was also a strange fixation by mirrors. Diego spent hours before the bathroom mirror, touching his blonde hair and muttering words that Carmen couldn't hear. As she approached, he was silent, but his eyes revealed a sadness that did not match his young age. Everything changed on the morning of March 3, 2020, the day Diego was 5 years old. While Carmen prepared pancakes in the kitchen, the smell of melted mantequilla filled the house. It was then that Diego appeared at the door with such a serious expression that it made her stop in the middle of the movement. "Mom," he said in his thin voice, "I need to tell you something very important about my past life." Carmen left the spatula on the counter and turned to his son, feeling a shiver through his spine. "Your past life? What are you talking about, my love?" The boy climbed into one of the wooden chairs in the kitchen, settling with a posture that resembled one adult about to have a serious conversation than a child. "Before I was Diego, I was a lady named Patricia. She was a brunette, had very beautiful black hair and loved to wear big and gold earrings." Carmen's heart fired so strong that she was sure that her son could hear. He hung up the stove and sat in front of him, looking at him in the eyes. "And what else do you remember this lady Patricia?" Diego paused, as if organizing complex memories in his childish mind. "She lived in a very tall building in the center, near a place where they sold a lot of beautiful things for women. She loved to make up and wear red dresses." Another break, this time longer. "But one day there was a lot of fire and smoke. I couldn't leave." Carmen felt the air get heavy. His hands began to tremble as he heard his son describe a death he could never have lived. "And then, what happened, my love?" Diego smiled with the innocence that only children have when talking about things that adults cannot understand. "I went to the sky, Mom. It was very beautiful, everything shone like the crystals you like. And there it was, God, very big and very good. He told me that I had to go back because you were waiting for me." Carmen took her hands to her mouth, trying to contain a hiccup. Roberto had left early for work, so she was alone with her son and those words that challenged all the logic. "And how did you come back, my son?" The boy went down his chair and approached to hug her. "God gave me a little push, like when you push me. RA in the park's balance. When I woke up, it was already your baby, and you called me Diego." He squeezed her tightly. "But I remember everything, Mom. That's why I don't like boys' clothes, because I know what it's like to be a lady." That afternoon, when Roberto arrived at work, Carmen told him everything. He, a practical man who always solved the problems with logic and numbers, heard in silence, passing his fingers through the beard he had growing. "It must be his imagination," he murmured, trying to convince himself. "Children invent stories all the time." But that night, when they thought Diego was already sleeping, they heard him talking to his room alone. Carmen approached the ajar door and what he saw left it paralyzed. The boy was sitting at the mirror of the dresser, combing his hair with a pink brush, while whispering, "Don't worry, Patricia, I'll take care of you. Let's be fine in this new body." The following days have gone into a forced normality. Carmen tried to keep the routine, take Diego to school, prepare meals, correct students' tasks. But each time he looked at his son, the words about Patricia echoed in his mind like a bell that would not stop chipping. Diego, in turn, seemed lighter after the revelation, as if he had gotten rid of a long-time burden. However, their behaviors, now seen from this new perspective, gained disturbing meaning. On the morning of a Friday, while passing strawberry jam on roasted bread, Diego commented casually, "Mom, why don't you use black eyeliner like I used before?" Carmen almost choked on the coffee. Black eyeliner? Yes, I loved painting my eyes like that. The boy drew an imaginary line around his own eyes with his index finger. It also wore a very red lipstick, like the roses of the garden of Grandma. Roberto, who read the news on his cell phone while drinking coffee, raised his eyes with skepticism. "Diego, boy doesn't wear makeup, this is a woman thing." But the boy responded with the patience of those who explain something obvious, "Dad, I was once a woman. I called me Patricia and lived in a place full of car noise." Carmen and Roberto exchanged a look loaded with concern. Roberto left the phone on the mahogany table, bought to celebrate 5 years of marriage. "Son, can you tell us more about this place where Patricia lived?" Diego's eyes shone, as if he was waiting for that question for days. It was a very tall building near the cathedral. From my window, I saw a huge store that sold beautiful dresses and high-heeled shoes. He paused to take a sip of hot chocolate, leaving a mustache of foam on his lips. Diego passed the back of his hands through his mouth, carefully removing the last traces of chocolate foam. And below there was a beauty room that was called something with beautiful dot. He frowned, as if he revived dusty memories. "Oh yes. Beautiful time." Carmen felt a cold shiver through his spine. "I knew that place." He had been there once, as a teenager, accompanied by his older sister. It was well in the historical heart of Guadalajara, in one of those 80s buildings, with its straight lines and a while of a time that would no longer come back. "And what else do you remember about this building, my love?" he asked, his voice slightly shaky. Diego closed his eyes for a moment, as if visualized every detail. There was a very long ladder, with glowing iron handrails. And downstairs lived a lady who lived screaming with the kids. "Call, Pink? Rock?" He bit his lip, concentrated. "No. Dona Rosario. And she had an orange cat that climbed in my window all the time." Roberto pushed the chair back with a dry creak, the discomfort on his face. "Carmen, this is absurd. Children absorb information from everywhere: television, conversations they hear without us realizing." But she interrupted him with a sudden gesture. "Roberto, he is describing specific places. Real places." That afternoon, after leaving Diego at the mother-in-law's house, Carmen drove to the historic center. I had not stepped on that region for years, but the address of the beautiful season was recorded in his memory as a scar. Friday afternoon traffic was a chaos of honks and street vendors shouting them. Squirms among the stopped cars. Even so, he found the building without culture. It was exactly as Diego had described: 8 floors of gray concrete, windows with a forged iron, a facade that carried the weight of decades. And there, in the ground floor store, the golden and worn sign, "Beautiful time, the sigh of the past." Carmen's heart beat so hard that she felt her wrist throb in her throat. The lobby smelled the moisture and bleach, the walls peeling in irregular spots. The gate, a 60-year-old woman, was weaving a pink sweater while accompanying a soap opera on a small TV on the counter. "Sorry, ma'am," Carmen forced a casual tone, but his hands betrayed his nervousness. "Do you have been working here for a long time?" "Oh, my daughter, it's going to be 15 years old." "Why? Looking for apartment?" The woman didn't even lift her eyes from the knitting. "No. I wanted to know if you met a girl named Patricia. I lived here about 7 years ago, about." The knitting stopped in the air. The gate took off her glasses with slow movements, cleaning the lens on the apron bar. Patricia Morales. Of the fifth floor. Carmen felt his legs weakened. Could you tell me how she was? The woman sighed, as if she carried an old weight. Poor. It was beautiful for Coyote, brunette, always well arranged. I loved some big earrings and red dresses. I worked in a boutique nearby. She paused, sanitizing herself. But died in the 2013 fire. What a tragedy, my God. The world turned around Carmen. Fire? His voice came out like a thread. This, my daughter. A short circuit in the fourth floor, and the fire spread too fast. Patricia got stuck. The firefighters couldn't. The gate was blessed again. It was such a good girl. I always greeted me with a smile as I passed. Carmen swallowed hard. And, was there a lady here named Rosario? Dona Rosario, from the third floor? Oh, that's it. The woman laughed without joy. I lived fighting with their grandchildren as they came to visit her. And there was a orange cat that kept climbing the windows of the others. A damanho. In the car, back home, Carmen drove as if she were in a trance. Her hands trembled so much on the wheel that she had to stop twice on the way, breathing deep so as not to crumble. Guadalajara's chaotic traffic, which usually irritated her, was now a relief, gave her time to process what she had just discovered. Patricia Morales had existed. He had lived exactly where Diego had described. He had died exactly as he had told. And all the details, the beautiful time, Dona Rosario, the orange cat, were real. By the time he arrived, Roberto had already sought Diego and his mother-in-law. He found them in the room, the boy writing a dinosaur puzzle on the floor while the husband helped, distracted by the caricatures on TV. The scene, so common, so normal, was surreal contrasted with the bomb that Carmen brought in the chest. Roberto, he called, his voice an effort to sound calm. We need to talk. He raised his eyes and immediately noticed, his pale face, his fingers that did not stop shaking. Diego, go to your room to play a little, son. The child obeyed without question. When the door closed, Carmen vented everything, the building, the gate, the details that confirmed every word of Diego. Roberto listened to her in silence, initial skepticism giving way to an expression that Carmen never turns into it, pure fear. This can't be real, he murmured, when she ended. It has to have a logical explanation. Which, Roberto? She exploded, her eyes burning. How does our 5-year-old son know about a woman who died 2 years before he was born? He got up, starting to walk back and forth as he always did when he was desperate. Maybe he heard something on TV. Maybe. Roberto, enough. Carmen planted in front of him, forcing him to stop. We need to investigate this seriously. We need more information about Patricia Morales. That night, after lying down Diego, the couple was awake, dipped on screens and notes. Roberto's laptop occupied the room table, surrounded by cold coffee cups and scribbled notebooks. The first results were articles on the fire of October 15, 2013. The titles heard as stab wounds, woman dies fire in the historic center, short circuit causes tragedy in apartment building, firefighters cannot rescue victim of the flames. But it was an article. El Informador file that brought the details that froze them. Roberto read aloud, Patricia Morales Ruiz, 28, worked as a saleswoman at Boutique Female Elegance, on Morelos Street. Carmen pointed to the screen, the voice failing, look here, it was known for its red dresses and flashy earrings. They continued reading. Patricia had been trapped on the 5th floor when the stairs filled with toxic smoke. His body had been found near the window, he had tried to escape there, but the height had made the rescue impossible. Roberto, Carmen whispered, his fingers squeezing his arm. Here she says she had no family. She was orphaned, raised in an orphanage in Tlaquepaque. He turned to her, his face a mask of horror. So what? So, she swallowed hard. So someone needs to know what happened to her. And that someone, it seems that it is our son. Diego. It was impossible to ignore the resemblance, not in physical traits, but in what transcends appearance, a deep sadness, as if both carried the weight of a longing that did not only belong to this life. Carmen squeezed the photo against her chest, feeling the cold roll as a omen. His fingers shaved as he passed every detail: the red dress, the golden earrings, the smile that hides more than it reveals. The next morning, the sun entered the kitchen window as an invitation to the truth. Diego was already at the table, drawing with color pencils, his children's features trying to capture something that his 5-year mind could not explain, but his heart insisted on remembering. Carmen sat next to her, watching the boy choose the red with a determination that shivered her. "Mommy," he said, without raising his eyes off the paper, "Patricia liked to draw flowers. She said they were like kisses from the earth." Carmen held her breath. I had never talked about flowers with Diego. Never. "How do you know this, my love?" He shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. "Because I remember. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see her hands painting petals." And the smell paused, frowning as if he tried to capture something in the air. "It was like the soap you use, but sweeter." It was too much. Too much to be coincidence. Too much to be imagined by a child. Carmen took the phone with hands that barely obeyed. The number of Leticia Herrera died again, but this time it was not to ask, it was to demand. His voice came firmly, despite the knot in his throat. "Senora Herrera, I need to know everything. Every detail you remember about Patricia Morales. Even things that seem unimportant." Across the line, a heavy sigh. Well, there was something strange. Patricia always spoke of a recurring dream. He said that when he died, he would not really leave. That would come back. Leticia hesitated. The doctors thought it was just stress, but she was insistent. He even wrote this in a letter. A letter? Carmen felt her heart shoot. Yes. He left with his neighbor by the side, a lady named Elvira. He said it was to be opened only after his death. But Elvira never handed over to anyone. He thought it was crazy. "Do you have this woman's address?" 30 minutes later, Carmen was already in the car, with Diego in the back seat, singing softly "With You" in a distance. She had not planned to take him, but when the boy insisted, "I want to go, Mommy. I need to see," had no strength to refuse. It was as if he knew. As if something inside him guided. Elvira's house smelled the cinnamon and old age. The lady, with white hair tied in a misaligned bun, received them with suspicion, until Carmen mentioned the name of Patricia. Then his eyes filled with tears. "Ay, mi Nina," she murmured, disappearing down a hallway and coming back with a yellowish envelope. "She made me promise she would keep it to the right time. I think this moment is now." Carmen opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside, a leaf of fragrant paper, handwritten with elegant letter. "If you're reading this, it's because I can't escape. But don't worry, I didn't go. Not completely. There are things that death can't take. Things that are in the air, the smells we love. If one day someone asks for me, say I'm in the red dress, in the shine of a earring, in the song that doesn't forget. That is not afraid. That I chose it. That I was waiting for her." Carmen couldn't contain the tears. Diego silently reached out and touched the roll, as if recognized the energy of those features. "She's here," he whispered. "Patricia is right here, Mommy." And for the first time Carmen was not afraid to believe. When Roberto returned from a job trip the next day, Carmen wasted no time. All the tests he had gathered on the table, yellowish photographs, documents faded with time, handwritten testimonials, and, above all, Diego's drawing that had scarily captured Patricia Morales's face. Roberto, a man of numbers and logic, examined each piece with the same meticulum with which he analyzed engineering projects. His fingers, accustomed to sliding on plants and calculations, were now shaking slightly as they flipped into papers that challenged full reason. 1 hour passed in silence, marked only by the tick of the wall clock. Finally, he raised his eyes, and there was no disdain in them, but a mixture of astonishment and surrender. "Carmen, this is scientifically impossible," he admitted, running his hand over his face as if he could erase the evidence before him. "But I can't deny what is here either. What are we going to do?" she already knew the answer. While Roberto still processed the impact, Carmen had acted. In the early hours of sleep, she had been plunging into research, following wires of hope in obscure forums and academic articles. This is how he found the name of Dr. Miguel Angel Herrera, psychiatrist at the University of Guadalajara, expert in cases of inexplicable memory in children. A man who, according to rumors, did not discard any hypothesis, even those that surpassed the limits of science. I already contacted an expert, she said, sliding a business card on the table. He wants to meet Diego next week. Roberto looked at the name printed on the paper, then to his son, who played on the floor with his cards, oblivious to the weight of those secrets. Neither of them knew, however, that Diego's revelations were just beginning. That their words would soon make even the most skeptical of men to question whether death was really an end, if only one pass, a door ajar to something larger. Dr. Herrera's office was in a colonial case in the historical heart of Guadalajara, where time seemed to have bowed to preserve serenity. Adobe's thick walls drowned out the noises of the city, and the high ceiling of wooden beams created an almost sacred atmosphere. Carmen sat in the waiting room, his hands intertwined tightly, while Diego, impaired, leafed a book of short stories as if he were there only for a routine visit. She wore her navy sweater that she had knitted the months of waiting before her birth and the red sneakers she insisted on wearing because they made less noise than adult shoes. Vasquez family, he called a nurse, with a voice so soft that it seemed part of the very silence of the place. Dr. Herrera received them standing behind a table full of books, pedagogical toys and diplomas that covered an entire wall as seedlings of decades of study. He was a man of about 50, with an impeccably trimmed gray beard and eyes that, behind the thick weapon lenses, conveyed an almost hypnotic calm. Seeing Diego did not hesitate, he knelt, putting himself at the boy's level. "Diego," he said, with a smile that was not condescending but genuine. "Your parents told me very interesting things about you." Diego watched him for long seconds, with that direct and evaluator look that only children have, but who seems to see beyond social masks. So, bluntly, he asked, "Do you believe me, doctor?" Herrera exchanged a quick look with Carmen and Roberto before answering, choosing the words carefully. "Believe what, Diego?" "I was Patricia before I was Diego." The psychiatrist did not shake himself. Instead of denying or ridiculing, it simply tilted your head, as if you are preparing to hear a story that can change everything. "Do you know something?" he said, finally. "I still don't know what to believe. But I would love you to tell me everything you remember. Do you get?" What followed was an hour that would challenge not only science, but reality. Diego spoke with clarity that froze everyone's spine in the room. Not only did it describe Patricia Morales' life, the details of the apartment, the smell of the perfume she wore, the song she played on the day of the fire, also what came later. The moment when the smoke filled the room, the desperation of not being able to breathe, the pain in the chest as if someone had put a stone on it. "I tried to open the window, but I couldn't," he said as he made a toy cart slide on the table, as if the movement helped him revive his memory. Then everything got dark. Dr. Herrera wrote down everything, his pen scratching the roll with an urgency that betrayed his attempt to maintain the composure. "And then?" he asked when Diego paused. The boy raised his eyes from the toy, and in them there was a depth that did not belong to a 5-year-old. "I slept. But not as when I sleep at night. It was different." "Like this?" Diego hesitated, looking for the right words. "I woke up in a very beautiful place. All white and gold, like when the sun hits the pool water and makes those dancing lights." His face lit up. "And I had music, but not like here. It was as if the colors sung." Carmen felt her heart tighten. Roberto, usually so contained, leaned forward in the chair, absorbed by each syllable. "There were more people in this place?" he asked the psychiatrist, with a voice that barely disguised the emotion. "Yes, but I didn't see it right. They were like lights that moved and spoke." Diego frowned, concentrated. "But there was someone very big. Very good. I could see a little. Can you describe this person?" The boy was thoughtful, his fingers playing with the edge of the table. "It was like the biggest father in the world and the sweetest mother together. And the voice, his eyes shone, it was like all the beautiful songs that exist, all at once. Diego smiled, and in that smile there was such a pure happiness that it seemed to come from another time. He said Patricia had done a good job in her life. But now I had a new job. What work was that? Being Diego. He pointed to Carmen and Roberto. They were very sad because they couldn't have children before. I came to take care of them. Carmen stifled a hiccup. It was true. 8 years of attempts, of failed treatments, of losses that left them exhausted. Until, against all probabilities, Diego has arrived. And how did you get here? Asked Dr. Herrera, now without even pretending to write it down. His pen was still, and his eyes did not leave the boy's face. The good Lord took me to a very large window. Diego got up and, without asking permission, climbed on Carmen's lap, as if he needed contact to continue. There, I saw many moms and dads on earth. He showed me two and said they needed a lot of love. That I could give you this. And you accepted? Yes. Diego nestled his head on Carmen's shoulder. But he warned that it was going to be difficult. That I was going to remember Patricia's things and that it was going to scare you. But that was important that I come. Dr. Herrera had stopped writing. Now he only watched, with an expression that oscillated between professional and something deeper, as if, for the first time in 3 decades of career, he was facing a truth that transcended all his books. And you remember how it was, the trip here? Diego returned to his chair, shaking his legs like any child of his age. It was like slipping in a very long slide. The good Lord pushed me slowly, everything was dark for a while. His face lit up. Then I felt a cold and heard my mother crying. But it was happy cry. Carmen remembered perfectly from that moment. After a difficult delivery, when they finally put Diego in their arms, she cried for hours, not in pain, but of relief, of gratitude, something that seemed a reunion. And when I woke up right, it was already the baby Diego. He shrugged. But I remembered everything. Dr. Herrera closed his notebook. Their fingers, who once wrote with clinical accuracy, now they were shaking slightly. Diego, he said, looking at him in his eyes, what you told me today is very special. Do you know that most children don't remember these things? I know. Diego smiled, with a wisdom that did not match his 5 years. In the beautiful place, they said some remember and some don't. It depends on why they send us back. And why did you send you? The boy did not hesitate. To take care of Mom and Daddy. Her gaze turned to Carmen, full of such an intense love. And for people to know that when we die, it doesn't end. We only go home a little, and then come back. When the session ended, Dr. Herrera asked to speak alone with Carmen and Roberto. He closed the office door, sat at the table, and for the first time his voice lost his professional tone. In 30 years of career, he confessed, I've seen many cases of children with inexplicable memories. But I have never heard such a detailed account of the process, the death, the transition, the rebirth, and much less with so much evidence that can be verified. Roberto, always pragmatic, crossed his arms. What is your professional opinion, doctor? Herrera took a deep breath. And then he said something that neither expected to hear. As a scientific, my duty would be to guide them to seek rational explanations, but as a human being who heard Diego's testimony, I believe they are facing something that challenges everything we thought we know about consciousness. Dr. Herrera paused, as if every word weighed. I recommend that you contact colleagues specialized in this type of phenomena and document every additional detail you remember. His voice gained severity. Because this case. He pointed to the boy, who watched the conversation with an unusual serenity, can rewrite our understanding of death and continuity of consciousness. None of them imagined that Diego's story was about to take a course that would eliminate any shadow of doubt about his memories. 3 months after the consultation with Herrera, the life of the Vasquez had turned upside down. The boy's account, discreetly disclosed by the psychiatrist among academic circles, leaked to the press and now involved them in a mythic whirlwind they never sought. Carmen squeezed his hands on his lap, sitting on Unanswered Mysteries Set, Mexico's most assisted program on inexplicable phenomena. The studio's lights burned, the buzz of technicians and cameras created an electrical tension that squeezed his chest. Diego, on the contrary, seemed immune to nervousness. Sitting in a high chair adapted for children, he swung his legs while examining, fascinated, the equipment around. He wore his only navy suits dressed by his mother the night before and a red tie he had insisted on wearing. Red gives confidence, Patricia always said. The presenter, Alejandra Medina, respected journalist, known for her skepticism in paranormal cases, approached before the recording. He knelt up to the boy, with a smile that did not hide his professional curiosity. Diego, do you know why we are here today? Yes, ma'am. Her voice was sweet, but firm. Because they want to see if I really remember when I was Patricia. Exactly. Alejandra exchanged a quick look at the production. And let's take a very special test. Carmen felt his stomach turn around. The special test had been designed by a team of psychologists and parapsychologists to irrefutably prove if Diego could identify Patricia Morales among strangers. When the cameras called, Alejandra presented the case with the accuracy of those who dominate the stage and the theme. We prepared a selection of 20 photos, he announced, looking straight at the lens. All are from dark women, between 25 and 30 years old, who lived in Guadalajara in the 1990s and 2000s. These include Patricia Morales. An assistant positioned a table ahead of Diego. The photos, down and numbered, formed a board of possibilities. The presenter took a sealed envelope and displayed it to the cameras. None of us in this studio, neither do I, know what Patricia's photo is. Only the program director knows the correct number, and he is sealed here. She shook the envelope. Diego, do you understand what you need to do? The boy nodded. Really? I have to find the picture I am in Patricia. Exactly. It can take the time you need. Diego descended from the chair and approached the table. The 20 photos were arranged in 4 rows of 5. He walked slowly around, as if he heard a whisper he only heard. The studio dive. He lit in silence. Only the tinnitus of the cameras and the contained breath of the audience was heard. In the 3rd row, Diego closed his eyes. When he opened them, he reached out on photo number 14, hesitated for a second, and pointed it with conviction. This. His voice didn't train. This is me. When it was Patricia. Alejandra tore the envelope. His hands trembled as he read the roll. The camera captured his pale face when he announced. Patricia Morales's photo is number 14. The studio exploded. Carmen covered his mouth, choking a hiccup. Roberto was still, as if the floor had opened under his feet. Diego, however, frowned, confused by the commotion. Did I get it right? He asked, innocent. But the test was not over. Alejandra turned to photo 14, revealing Patricia's face. Then he knelt again before the boy, with a second proof in his hands. Diego, in this photo, Patricia wears earrings. Can you say what format they have? The boy studied the image for long seconds. The quality of printing made the earrings almost imperceptible, blurred gold spots. Even so, his fingers traced shapes in the air. They were like golden leaflets. They had 3 leaves each, and they swung when I walked. Alejandra exchanged a loaded look with someone out of pain. Then he opened a velvet box he had taken from his pocket. Inside, a pair of leaf-shaped gold earrings, just as Diego had described. 3 delicate leaves in each piece, which folded slightly when she moved them. These earrings were found among Patricia's belongings after the fire, he said, handing them to the boy. The social worker who took care of the case lent them especially for today. Diego reached out as if he received a relic. His eyes shone. My favorite earrings. He whispered, caressing the gold. I thought they had burned. He held them with a delicacy that did not match his 5 years. Dona Guadalupe, from the Female Elegance, gave me as a gift when I completed a year there. He said they combined with my eyes. Carmen remembered the process Rosa had achieved. Patricia really worked a year in the boutique before she died. But Diego didn't stop there. While holding the earrings, unpublished details sprang from his memory, such as water from a hidden source. Dona Guadalupe had a daughter, Veronica, who studied medicine. I always told me about her classes. His face lit up. And your store owner had a Chihuahua puppy, Napoleon, who was hiding under the counter. Alejandra had already checked everything. After the program, it would confirm each information with independent sources, and all, without exception, would prove true. But what no one expected was what would come next. Diego stared at the camera, as if talking directly with someone beyond the lens. Patricia didn't die alone in the fire, he said, low, but of course. She tried to save the girl from the apartment 302. A cold traveled the studio. Apartment 302 was not in any official report. And yet, when investigators revisited the fire department archives, they would find that night a 7-year-old child, daughter of Patricia's neighbors, had been missing in the flames. Your body had never been found. Diego smiled, as if shared a secret. I know where she is. Current and ancient boutique staff testimonies that still operated in the heart of Guadalajara confirmed every detail. Guadalupe Hernandez, in fact, worked there in 2013, and his daughter Veronica attended medicine at the University of Guadalajara. Raul Mendoza, the owner, attested that he had a Chihuahua named Napoleon, dead old age in 2015. Details that only Patricia could know, intimate notes of a life that never listed in official records. Alejandra, in her post-program article, spared no adjectives. It was as if the boy had accessed secret files of an existence that was not his own. The program exceeded 5 million viewers, becoming one of the most documented reincarnation cases in Mexican television history. But for Diego, all media commotion was secondary. What really mattered was that, finally, his parents understood who he was and where he came from. Your mission, bring peace and love to the Vasquez family, was fulfilled. 5 years have passed since that night in the studio. The boy who he had shaken Mexico with memories of a past life was now 10 years old. As usually happens in these extraordinary cases, Patricia Morales's memories faded like an old paper ink, diluted with time. Diego had become an ordinary child. He played soccer on the school team, collecting Pokemon cards, and dominated the video games. But there was something about him that was not erased, an emotional wisdom that left teachers and colleagues perplexed. A compassion that seemed to come from someone who had already known death and rebirth. Carmen watched him run through the backyard of the new house, in a quieter neighborhood, away from the spotlight. Sometimes it wondered if it was all a feverish dream. Until his fingers found the velvet box on the toucher, where he kept Patricia's earrings. There they were, tangible, undeniable. Do you miss Patricia? He had asked his son months before, when he had turned 10. Diego had reflected for a moment, with that seriousness he still reserved for important subjects. I don't miss Mom, because she's still here. And had touched his chest. Now we are one, like when you mix 2 paints and a new color is born, with a little of each. The life of the Vasquez had found an almost magical balance. Roberto was promoted at work. Carmen had written a book about his experience, donating all profits to an orphanage in Tlaquepaque, the same where Patricia had grown. Diego, the boy who remembered the sky, became bestseller, offering hope for thousands of bereaved families. Dr. Miguel Ángel Herrera continued to study the case, documenting the gradual transition of a child with memories of another life to a boy fully integrated into his new identity. His research, based on Diego and in similar cases, has revolutionized children's psychology in Mexico. What we have learned, he wrote in his last article, is that human consciousness is much more complex and resilient than we imagined. Diego Vasquez's case suggests that personality is not limited to a single body or one existence, but it can be a continuum that transcends physical death. Until, on a day of October, exactly 12 years after the death of Patricia Morales, Carmen received an unexpected call. It was Leticia Herrera, the social worker who had taken care of Patricia's case. Mrs. Vasquez, he said, with his embargoed voice, I need to tell you something I just found out. They met that afternoon at a historic coffee, a few blocks from the building where Patricia had lived. Leticia brought a yellowish folder, full of forgotten documents in the files. Take a look at this, he said, extending on the table an adoption form dated 1985. It was Patricia's request for 18 to adopt a child. Carmen read, astonished. Patricia described her stable work, her burning desire to be a mother, although single and young. What happened? He asked. It was rejected, said Letitia. At that time, it was almost impossible for a woman alone to adopt. But see what she wrote here. Carmen read the words outlined with Patricia's firm letter. I always felt that there is a child somewhere that needs me as much as I need her. I know that true love creates family in ways we don't understand. If you can't be a mother in the traditional way, I trust fate will find another way. The tears ran down Carmen's face as he finished reading. Do you realize? Letitia whispered. Patricia always knew she would be a mother. I just didn't know how. That night Carmen told Diego and Roberto about the document. The boy, who rarely spoke of Patricia, heard in silence and then smiled with wisdom that had never completely abandoned him. She always wanted to be a mom, he said simple. And now it is. Just in a different way. He approached Carmen and hugged her tightly. Thank you for letting me be your son, Mom. In heaven, they said you needed as much love as I had to give. The Vasquez never doubted that they had been part of a miracle. Not only did they receive their son they wanted so much, but helped a soul realize their deeper dream of being a mother, even if it challenged all the known laws of reality. Patricia's specific memories went out, but her essence remained in Diego, her compassion, her love for beauty, her ability to make others feel and feel. Specials. Although he did not speak more than past lives, sometimes Carmen caught him in front of the mirror, with a thoughtful expression, as if he was greeted in silence someone who lived in his reflection. On quiet nights, while Diego slept deeply in his room decorated with superhero posters, Carmen and Roberto often revisited that miracle. Do you think he will remember again when he grows up? Asked Roberto. I don't know, Carmen replied, but it doesn't matter. Patricia has fulfilled her mission. He taught us that love is stronger than death, that families form in mysterious ways and that sometimes miracles come in disguised as tragedy. Node. On Carmen's dresser, Patricia's golden earrings shredded under the moonlight that was filtered out the window. They were like small headlights of a presence that never went out. And if, at that dawn of silence, someone would pay attention to the open soul, perhaps heard the echo of a lullaby song, a soft melody, whispered by a voice that never failed to watch over his son's sleep. Because true love does not surrender to death. It transforms itself, goes beyond borders, challenges the laws of time, and finds impossible ways to honor the promises made in the deepest of the heart. Diego Vasquez was living proof that when love is strong enough, not even death can break the bond between a mother and her son. This love that overcomes finitude exists. And this story is the testimony that genuine ties do not break down, they reinvent themselves. If you know someone who needs a sign of hope, share this narrative. And tell us, have you ever felt the presence of the one who broke, but never really gone? Your story may be the light someone is looking for. Follow us for more reports that remind us, love has no end. It just changes shape to stay.